The night air outside feels like divine blessing after the confined heat. Epeius drops silently to the stone floor of the temple, immediately moving aside to make way for the warriors following. One by one they emerge: Odysseus, Diomedes, Menelaus, others, each moving with the silent precision of experienced killers. No Trojan witnesses this emergence. The temple stands empty save for the statue of Athena, seeming to watch with stone eyes as her supposed offering disgorges Greece's deadliest warriors. The men assemble in pre-arranged groups, each with assigned targets. The gates to be opened, key defensive positions to be secured, specific Trojan leaders to be eliminated before they can organize resistance. Odysseus addresses them in the barest whisper. For 10 years they've kept us outside. Tonight we end it. No mercy, no hesitation. For Greece. For Greece. 30 voices respond in near-silent unison. Weapons drawn, they move toward the temple doors and the sleeping city beyond. Epeius falls into position with the group assigned to secure the main gates. After years of being dismissed as the cowardly craftsman, tonight he will prove his worth in blood as well as skill. Behind them stands the hollow horse, its purpose now fulfilled, empty but for the lingering scent of confined warriors and the invisible weight of its deadly deception. By dawn it will be nothing but a wooden shell amid a conquered city. As they slip into the Trojan night, Epeius glances back one final time at his creation, the masterpiece that succeeded where 10 years of warfare failed. History may forget his name, but his work will live forever in the fall of legendary Troy. The warriors disappear into the darkened streets like shadows, moving toward their targets with deadly purpose. The trap has been sprung, the great deception completed. Now begins the violent epilogue to a decade of siege, and at the center of it all, connecting concept to execution, stands the unlikely figure of Epeius. The trembling spearman transformed into history's most effective military engineer, the coward whose craftsmanship conquered Troy. As the first distant screams begin to pierce the night, the wooden horse stands silent, witness to the beginning of the end, a monument to human ingenuity and deception that will be remembered long after the names of individual warriors fade from memory. The darkness of Troy's final night is broken by scattered torchlight, small moving flames that mark the progress of Greek warriors through the sleeping city. The silence that initially greeted their emergence from the wooden horse has shattered into a cacophony of alarm horns, shouts, and the unmistakable sounds of battle. Epeius moves with his assigned group toward the main gates. Despite years of being mocked for his battlefield hesitation, tonight his hands remain steady on his sword. Perhaps it's the clarity of purpose, perhaps the presence of his comrades, or perhaps something has fundamentally shifted within him after creating the instrument of Troy's downfall. Whatever the reason, the trembling carpenter has become a determined warrior. The streets of Troy form a confusing labyrinth to most of the Greeks, but Odysseus planned for this. Each attack group includes at least one man who studied maps of the city, memorizing key routes and landmarks. Epeius's group follows such a guide, Machaon, who spent years treating wounded Trojans under truce flags and used those opportunities to mentally map the city's layout. They encounter the first real resistance at a small guardhouse near the main wall. 4 bleary-eyed Trojan soldiers, likely assigned punishment duty on this night of celebration, emerge with spears levelled. They've heard the commotion from other parts of the city and stand ready, if confused. "Greeks!" one shouts in alarm, finally noticing their armour in the dim light. "Greeks inside the walls." The fight is brief and brutal. These are not the fresh-faced Trojan soldiers of 10 years ago, but neither are the Greeks the warriors they once were. A decade of siege has worn down both sides. What the Greeks retain, however, is the desperate intensity of men executing their final gambit. They cannot afford to fail. When it's over, Epeius finds himself standing over a fallen Trojan, sword bloody in his hand. He doesn't recall the specific movements of the fight, just the rush of action, the impact of bronze on bronze, then flesh yielding to his blade. His typical battlefield panic never materialized. Instead, a cold focus carried him through. "Oh, steady work," comments Anticlus, one of the legendary fighters among them. The simple acknowledgement, warrior to warrior, lands differently than any praise Epeius has received for his craftsmanship. They continue toward the gates, moving faster now as alarm spreads through the city. The element of surprise is fading with each passing moment. Their task, reaching and opening the massive gates before Troy's defences can properly organise, grows more urgent. The main gates of Troy are engineering marvels in themselves, massive wooden structures reinforced with bronze, operated by a complex system of counterweights that allow them to be opened by relatively few men. During the siege, these gates were the city's most closely guarded point. Tonight, they find them manned by only a skeleton crew, 4 guards who clearly didn't expect to see combat. The fight here is equally swift but more significant. Once secured, Machaon and Epeius examine the gate mechanism while others stand guard. As a craftsman, Epeius quickly grasps the operating principles. "Here," he directs, pointing to a large bronze lever. "This releases the counterweight, and these pins," he indicates several bronze bolts securing additional bracing, "must be removed first." Working together, they dismantle the bracing, then position themselves at the lever. The mechanism resists initially, perhaps from minimal use during the long siege, then yields with a groaning sound. Slowly, ponderously, the gates of Troy begin to swing outward. Through the widening opening, they catch their first glimpse of the plain beyond and the advancing Greek army, hundreds of shadowy figures moving swiftly toward the city, torches and weapons gleaming in the night. The fleet has returned under cover of darkness, disgorging thousands of warriors eager to end this interminable war. "Signal them," Machaon orders, and a soldier raises a torch, waving it in a specific pattern. The approaching forces adjust their course slightly, heading directly for the now open entrance. Epeius steps back from the gates, experiencing a strange doubling of perspective. The wooden horse, his creation, brought 30 men inside Troy's impenetrable defences. Now these same defences stand open, inviting in an army that could never breach them through direct assault. Craft and deception have accomplished what strength could not. As Greek forces pour through the gates, Epeius's group receives new orders. Join the assault on the upper city, where Trojan nobility and leadership reside. This is where the most determined resistance will form, where the true battle for Troy will be decided. They move uphill through increasingly chaotic streets. The city is fully awake now, its celebration transformed to panic. Civilians flee in confused terror, some running directly into Greek weapons in their desperation to escape. Warriors scramble to defend positions never meant to repel attacks from within. The carefully ordered life of Troy collapses into primal chaos, survival or death with little in between. The assault on the upper city unfolds like a nightmare. Greek warriors, frustrated by 10 years of stalemate, release their accumulated rage on anything in their path. Homes burn, treasures are seized, blood flows freely. The code of conduct that governed the long siege has evaporated in this final, desperate night. Epeius finds himself fighting alongside men he's known for a decade, yet never truly fought beside. His carpentry skills kept him largely away from the front lines during the siege. Tonight he is simply another Greek warrior in the sack of Troy. The violence intensifies as they approach the royal palace. Here, Trojan elite guards make their stand, protecting King Priam and his family. These are Troy's finest warriors, and despite being roused from celebration, they fight with the desperation of men defending their homes and loved ones. In the confined space of a palace corridor, Epeius faces a Trojan captain, a massive man wielding a bronze-tipped spear with practiced skill. The encounter feels strangely intimate after the chaotic street fighting. Just two men, weapons raised, eyes locked in mutual recognition of what must follow. The Trojan strikes first, his spear thrusting toward Epeius's chest. The carpenter-turned-warrior reacts with surprising speed, deflecting the point with his shield. The impact numbs his arm, but training takes over. He counters with a sword strike that the Trojan barely evades. They circle each other in the narrow space, each seeking advantage. The Trojan is stronger, more experienced in direct combat, but Epeius possesses something unexpected: the focused precision of a master craftsman, the ability to identify weakness in structure. He feints left, then right, watching how the Trojan responds, analysing his movement patterns as he would examine a piece of timber for grain and flaws. Everyone has patterns, weaknesses in their defences, just like wood has weak points along its grain. The Trojan lunges again, overextending slightly. Epeius sees the opening, a momentary gap in the man's guard. His sword finds the narrow space between breastplate and shoulder armour, sinking deep. The Trojan captain's eyes widen in surprise, then dim as he collapses. Epeius stands breathing heavily, sword dripping crimson onto the ornate palace floor. A craftsman's hands have taken a warrior's life. The irony doesn't escape him. "All forward," calls Diomedes, leading the palace assault. The throne room. They push deeper into the palace, encountering pockets of fierce resistance. The fighting becomes desperate, hand-to-hand in confined spaces. Men die on both sides, but the Greek advance continues inexorably. The tide of the war, balanced for a decade, has finally tipped decisively. When they reach the throne room, they find King Priam already dead. killed by Neoptolemus, Achilles' vengeful son who sought to finish what his father started. The ancient king's blood stains the steps of Zeus's altar where he sought sanctuary. Even sacred spaces offer no protection on this night of retribution. Epius turns away from the grisly scene, only to confront another. Through a doorway he glimpses Helen, the face that launched 1,000 ships, the woman over whom this endless war was fought. She stands frozen in a side chamber, her legendary beauty unmarred by the decade of conflict she inspired. Their eyes meet briefly across the blood-spattered hall, neither speaking what could possibly be said. Menelaus appears, his expression unreadable as he approaches his faithless wife. Epius withdraws, leaving them to whatever reconciliation or reckoning awaits. His part in this drama centers on wood and bronze, not the complexities of love and betrayal that sparked the war. As dawn approaches, Troy burns. Fires set deliberately or resulting from combat have spread throughout the city. The wooden horse, Epeius's masterwork, still stands in Athena's temple, untouched by the destruction surrounding it. Perhaps the Greeks retain some superstitious reverence for the instrument of their victory, or perhaps it's simply been forgotten in the chaos of conquest. Epius makes his way back to the temple as morning light begins to filter through smoke-filled air. He stands before his creation, studying it with a craftsman's critical eye. Already the wood shows signs of stress from its journey, small cracks in non-critical areas, slight warping from the previous day's heat. Still, it performed its function perfectly. No engineer could ask for more. He places a hand on the wooden flank, feeling the smooth texture of the oil-treated timber. This horse, this deceit shaped by his hands, has ended a war that consumed a decade of his life. Because of it, he might see his home again, the family workshop he abandoned to follow kings to Troy. Saying goodbye. The voice behind him belongs to Odysseus. The king of Ithaca looks exhausted but satisfied, blood staining his armor, a fresh cut marking his forehead. In a way, Epius acknowledges, it served its purpose. Odysseus studies the horse thoughtfully. History will remember this. When they speak of the fall of Troy, they'll speak of this horse. And its architect, Epius asks, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from his voice. He already knows the answer. Craftsmen fade from memory while kings and heroes enter legend. Odysseus surprises him with a genuine smile. I'll make sure they remember the man who built the wooden horse that conquered Troy, Epius of Phocis. Whether this is truth or merely a kind lie to a useful craftsman, Epius cannot tell. It hardly matters. He has his own measure of his accomplishment, needs no poet's songs to validate what his hands have created. What will happen to it? He asks, nodding toward the horse. Burn with the city, most likely, Odysseus replies pragmatically, unless you have some sentimental attachment. Epius considers this, then shakes his head. No, it was always meant to be temporary, a means to an end. Like so many things in war, Odysseus observes. He clasps Epius's shoulder briefly, then departs to continue organizing the systematic plunder of Troy, the claiming of treasures, the selection of captives, all the grim business that follows victory. Alone with his creation, Epius performs a final inspection. He checks each joint, each stress point, methodically assessing how the structure weathered its journey and purpose. The craftsman in him can't help this final assessment, this need to understand how his design performed under real conditions. Surprisingly, most of his innovations proved sound. The trapdoor mechanism functioned despite the momentary hesitation. The wheels supported the tremendous weight across uneven terrain. The internal bracing prevented collapse despite the shifting weight of 30 armed men. Only the ventilation proved inadequate. A design flaw he notes mentally, though there will never be another Trojan horse to improve upon. Still, a craftsman always seeks to learn from his work. As the morning advances, Troy's systematic destruction continues. Greek soldiers methodically loot every building, taking anything of value before putting structures to the torch. The population that survived the night's initial violence is gathered in the agora, women and children primarily, facing slavery or worse. The men of fighting age lie dead throughout the city, having mounted a valiant but ultimately futile defense. Epeius joins a group securing the lower city where resistance has largely collapsed. The work is grim and methodical, checking buildings for hidden Trojans, collecting valuables, ensuring no counterattack can form. The craftsman-turned-warrior performs these duties with the same focused attention he brings to his woodworking, though the tasks leave a bitter taste. This is victory, he reflects. This is what 10 years of sacrifice built toward, not glory or honour, but ash and tears and plunder. He wonders if it was worth the cost to either side. By midday, Troy's fall is complete. What took a decade of siege to accomplish has been finished in a single night of violence, all because of a wooden horse and the men it carried within. The Greek army assembles on the plain outside the burning city, organising their considerable spoils, preparing for the long-delayed journey home. Epius stands at the edge of the army, looking back at Troy's smouldering ruins. Through gaps in the smoke, he can still see the wooden horse silhouetted against flames, intact for now, though surely doomed to burn with everything else. He feels a strange connection to the city they've destroyed. For 10 years, Troy defined his existence as obstacle, as enemy, as the reason he couldn't return home. Now it's nothing but a pyre, and he finds no satisfaction in its destruction. "Contemplating your handiwork?" asks a voice beside him. Neoptolemus, Achilles' son, still bloody from his kills, including King Priam himself. In a way, Epius acknowledges. "You should be proud," the young warrior continues. "Your horse accomplished what my father couldn't, what none of us could through strength of arms." Pride seems inappropriate given the outcome. Neoptolemus looks surprised, then dismissive. They brought this on themselves when they sheltered Paris and Helen. 10 years they made us wait outside their walls. One night of fire seems fair exchange. The young man walks away, joining a group of warriors displaying their plunder. Epius remains watching Troy burn. He wonders how the poets will tell this tale in years to come. Will they speak of the craft that built the horse, or only the violence it delivered? Will they mention the trembling hands that nonetheless created destruction's perfect vessel as the army prepares to depart, leaving Troy to its final consumption by flames? Odysseus approaches Epeius one last time. "The kings have agreed," he says, without preamble. "You'll receive a portion of the treasure equal to any who fought inside the walls. Your horse earned it, if nothing else." Epius nods, accepting this recognition without particular joy. Wealth seems a poor measure of what was accomplished, conquis no, or lost, here at Troy. "What will you do?" Odysseus asks. "When you return home?" The question catches Epeius off guard. For so long, survival was the only future he could imagine. Now, with Troy fallen and the war ended, possibility stretches before him like an unfamiliar country. "Build things," he answers finally. "Things that shelter rather than deceive. Things that last." Odysseus studies him with those keen eyes that seem to see beyond surface appearances. "The horse will last longer than you think. Not the wood and bronze, perhaps, but the idea of it. Men will speak of the Trojan horse for generations. And its builder?" A slight smile touches the king's weathered face. "That depends on who tells the tale, doesn't it? History belongs to those who shape it, with swords, with words, or with skilled hands." With that cryptic response, Odysseus departs to oversee the army's withdrawal. By evening, the Greeks will be aboard their ships, beginning the long journey home to lands many haven't seen in a decade. Some will reach their destinations. Others will face storms, shipwrecks, or the vengeance of gods offended by acts committed during Troy's fall. Epius takes a final look at the burning city, at the distant silhouette of his wooden horse still visible through smoke and flame. Then he turns away, joining the flow of warriors returning to the ships. 10 years ago, he arrived at Troy a reluctant soldier, more comfortable with tools than weapons. He departs a changed man, not quite warrior, not quite craftsman, but something forged between those identities in the crucible of endless war. As he walks toward the shore, Epeius considers what awaits in Phocis, his homeland nearly forgotten after so many years away. His father's workshop may still stand, the familiar tools perhaps waiting for hands that remember their use. He might build houses, ships, furniture, ordinary things that support life rather than end it. Yet he knows the horse will always define him. Whatever he creates in years to come, nothing will match the terrible perfection of that hollow wooden beast that delivered death to Troy. It is his masterpiece and his burden, the achievement that will outlive anything else his hands might fashion. The Greek fleet departs as night falls, ships laden with plunder, warriors, and captives. On the horizon behind them, Troy burns like a funeral pyre, flames visible for miles across the darkening sea, a decade of conflict reduced to ash and memory. On the deck of a Phocian vessel, Epeius stands at the rail, watching the distant fire gradually diminish as they sail toward home. Other warriors celebrate around him, drinking wine, boasting of kills, displaying treasures claimed from Trojan homes. He remains apart, lost in contemplation of what they've accomplished, and how. The wooden horse was a perfect machine, he reflects, not in its construction, which had flaws a craftsman's eye could detect, but in its function as deception. It transformed the impossible into the inevitable. It ended a stalemate that seemed eternal. It proved that ingenuity could succeed where strength had failed for 10 long years. Perhaps there's wisdom in that, a lesson to carry forward into peace, the directness of war, spear against shield, will against will, creates little but suffering. The oblique approach, the unexpected solution, the reimagining of problems, these offer paths beyond endless conflict. As Troy disappears from view, consumed by darkness and distance, Epeius finally feels the war's grip loosen. He has survived. He has played his part. He has created something that, for better or worse, changed the course of history. The craftsman who trembled in battle has inscribed his name in the annals of warfare more indelibly than any spear-carrying hero. Not through violence, but through imagination and skill, through the work of his hands. Generations later, when Troy has faded to legend and the Greek heroes to myth, the wooden horse will remain in cultural memory, a symbol of cunning, of deception, of the hidden threat disguised as gift. Few will remember the name Epeius, the hands that built it, the mind that designed its crucial trapdoor. But perhaps that doesn't matter. A true craftsman lives on through his creations, not his name. The horse itself is testimony enough to the skill of its maker, to the ingenuity that finally ended an endless war. As the ship sails eastward toward dawn and home, Epeius closes his eyes, finally allowing exhaustion to claim him. In his dreams, he builds again, not instruments of war, but structures of peace, houses with sturdy beams, ships with graceful lines, furniture that welcomes human comfort. Yet even in dreams, the horse stands in the background, a shadow of wood and deception that follows him across time, a reminder that creation and destruction often flow from the same skilled hands. The gentle rocking of the ship on night-dark waves carries him deeper into sleep, toward home, toward whatever future awaits a man who ended a war with carpentry rather than courage. His hands, no longer trembling, rest peacefully at his sides. The hands that built the Trojan horse, that changed the course of history through craft rather than combat. And with that, like Epeius on his homeward journey, close your eyes and drift off to sleep, carried by gentle waves of story into dreams of your own making.